They tried everything to break you. They came at you with storms, shadows, silence, and screams. They wrapped your path in confusion, made you question your worth, made you believe you were forgotten, abandoned, and disposable. But the truth is, they were afraid. Afraid of what would happen if you ever remembered who you really are. Because from the very beginning, you weren't meant to blend in. You weren't here to fit their molds or wear their chains. You were made to carry light in places where hope had long since died, to walk through fire and come out refined, not destroyed. They studied your weakness, but they underestimated your strength. Every time they thought you were finished, you stood again, wounded, yes, tired, yes, but still standing. And that confused them. It scared them. Because those who walk with divine fire don't fall the way others fall. You rise through what others drown in. The flames that should have consumed you only carve you into something unshakable. And deep down, even your enemies knew you were never ordinary. So if you're hearing this right now, it's not by accident. This is your confirmation. Everything that came to break, you only awakened what hell feared most. Your divine fire. You are a chosen one, not by status, not by ego, but by survival. You survived things that should have taken you out. You endure betrayal, rejection, isolation, not as punishment, but as preparation. Because what's ahead of you requires a level of resilience the world can't teach. And as you listen, I invite you to watch this message until the end and leave your most heartfelt wishes in the comments. Type 777 and release that energy into the universe. Then don't forget to subscribe. This is your space to uncover what has been buried for a long time, to call upon the power that has been waiting for your permission. Your words carry weight. Your wishes matter. Speak them now, not as requests, but as declarations. What you plant today in truth will rise in power tomorrow. See, what they never told you is that the reason the attack was so intense is because the calling is so high. The deeper the pain, the higher the assignment. You weren't attacked because you were weak. You were attacked because you're dangerous to darkness. You carry codes of light that awaken others. You carry frequencies that break generational curses. You carry a story that, when fully activated, will shift atmospheres. And hell knows that. That's why the chaos followed you. That's why the isolation wouldn't let up. They wanted you to believe that suffering meant you were forsaken. But suffering was a refiner. The silence was sacred. The pain was proof that the fire hadn't gone out in you. It was being forged. And now, they're starting to feel the shift. They can sense the fire returning to your voice. They can see the light returning to your eyes. And it shakes them, because you weren't supposed to make it this far. You weren't supposed to find your way back. But you did. The chains didn't hold. The lies didn't stick. The shame didn't define you. And now you're dangerous. Not because of power in the worldly sense, but because of the clarity you carry. You've seen through illusion. You've broken cycles. You've faced demons, within and without, and lived to tell the truth they tried to bury. And no demon can stand in the presence of truth. There were moments you begged to be saved. Nights you cried out, wondering if anyone heard. And while it may have felt like silence, heaven was working in the background, rearranging, aligning, orchestrating things beyond what your eyes could see. The protection wasn't always visible, but it was always there. You were never alone in the fire. You are not who they said you were. You are who the storm could not destroy. The very evidence of your calling is written in the things that couldn't kill you. And if you're still here, still breathing, still hoping, still listening, it means the fire in you is not done burning. You are a walking defiance to the forces that try to end you. You were hidden, yes, but hidden for preservation, hidden until the right time, until you were strong enough to carry the fire without apology. And now is that time. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more truth. It needs more people who walked through fire and didn't lose their voice. People like you, chosen ones. So the next time they wonder why nothing can touch you, remind them you were sealed, not by the world approval, but by divine protection. You were called, covered, and chosen. And there's not a force in hell strong enough to undo what heaven sealed. You've reached a level now where your presence alone disturbs what's false. Not because you speak louder than others, but because you vibrate at a frequency that exposes what was meant to stay hidden. You don't even have to defend yourself anymore. Your silence speaks volumes. Your healing speaks volumes. And to those who try to chain you in your former pain, your transformation is terrifying, because when you heal, you strip them of their power over you. They no longer get to narrate your worth. They build entire illusions, hoping you'd stay small. They made you question your intuition, your gifts, your vision. And for a while, you believed them. You shrank, you silenced yourself, you bent to their expectations. But something inside of you refused to die. A whisper, a flame, a knowing. It kept calling you back to truth, even when your world was falling apart. That wasn't coincidence. That was a divine fire inside of you choosing to survive. They saw it before you did. The reason they came for your identity so early in life was because your identity held keys. They tried to bury it beneath labels, trauma, distractions, addictions, but it didn't work. Because chosen ones are built differently. We don't break like others. We bend, we shatter, we scream, but we rebuild stronger each time. Our souls remember who we are, even when our minds forget. And now you're remembering. You're waking up. You're realizing that what was sent to destroy you was secretly teaching you how to rise. Every betrayal was a redirection. Every ending was a new alignment. And every dark season, a training ground. You were learning endurance, discernment, self-trust. You were being stripped of illusions, not blessings. This is the part where you stop apologizing for surviving, where you stop explaining your glow to people who never respected your shadow. Because your light was earned. It wasn't given. It came through nights of crying out to the heavens with no answer, through days of wondering why you were the one chosen to suffer so much. But now you see, you weren't being punished. You were being prepared. Preparation doesn't feel like protection when you're in it. It feels like abandonment, silence, even betrayal. But now that you've come out of it, you see the truth. You see how protected you were, how every door that shut was a blessing, how every delay was divine. You weren't late. You were right on time. They called you too intense, too emotional, too sensitive. But what they called flaws were your gifts in disguise. That sensitivity, it's empathy. That intensity, it's fire. That emotion, it's compassion. You were never too much. You were always too true for a world addicted pretending. And as you continue healing, the panic will grow louder. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your very existence threatens what was built on lies. You carry truth. You carry fire. And fire reveals. It doesn't ask permission. It simply burns away what can't stand in its presence. So let them panic. Let them fear the light you carry. Because you're not here to be liked. You're here to be a lighthouse. A reminder that survival is sacred. That rising is holy. That walking through hell and coming out still soft, still hopeful, still believing. That's the real miracle. You're not the same person who once begged for validation. You've evolved. You've outgrown rooms that once felt like the whole world. And that's okay. Growth requires grief. You'll mourn the version of yourself who didn't know better, who tolerated less, who thought survival was the same as peace. But now, you know, you've tasted the difference. You realize that your peace is worth more than anyone's approval, that your alignment matters more than your image, that your inner truth is more powerful than any external narrative. And now you walk with that, quietly, boldly, divinely. This is what hell couldn't break. Not your strength, but your soul. Not your voice, but your purpose. Not your body, but your fire. And for that reason alone, you've already won battles that were never supposed to be survivable. You didn't just survive, you transformed. So breathe, stand tall, and remember this. You were forged, not forgotten, protected, not punished. And what you're walking into now, it's not just a reward, it's the return. The divine echo of everything you gave, everything you endured, and everything you never stopped believing in, even when no one else did. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when they stop asking why it happened and begin asking what it taught them. That moment changes everything. Because the second you reclaim your narrative, the enemy's grip begins to loosen. The chains fall. Not because someone gave you permission, but because you finally stopped waiting for one. And let's be honest, it wasn't just people who underestimated you. At times, you underestimated yourself. You looked in the mirror and saw only broken pieces. You thought healing meant becoming who you used to be. But the truth is, you're never meant to go back. You were meant to evolve, to become someone the past couldn't contain. The reason hell couldn't break you is because heaven built you. The fire they sent your way wasn't enough to extinguish the fire within. You were born with something sacred, a soul memory, a divine design, a light that doesn't ask for permission to shine. And when you began to awaken, when you started rising from the ashes of everything they thought would bury you, the ground beneath them began to shake. This is why they fear you now. Not because you're angry, not because you're vengeful, but because you're unshakable. You've walked through the storm and made peace with the thunder. You've made peace with the silence, with the delays, with the pain that used to paralyze you. Now, you walk with fire in your veins and stillness in your chest. You see, healing isn't loud. It doesn't scream for attention. It moves in whispers, in small choices, in moments of clarity that come after nights of chaos. And that's why most people miss it. But not you. You saw through the illusion. You realized that the battlefield wasn't outside. It was always within. And once you started winning that war, the external shifted. They never expected you to return to yourself. That's the part that undoes them, because they saw what you become if you ever remembered who you are. That's why they try to strip you of your name, your truth, your fire. But you were encoded with something they couldn't access. You were made to withstand what others couldn't. You were chosen to rise in ways that defy logic. This is why your story is so powerful. Because it didn't come easy. It came with scars, with losses, with nights of silence, so heavy you forgot what hope felt like. But you kept going, not because it was easy, but because something inside refused to quit. That part of you is divine. That part of you is eternal. And now the world can feel your return. They sense it when you walk into a room. Your energy no longer conforms. It commands. You don't need to announce your power. It's felt. It's alive in every boundary you hold, every truth you speak, every time you choose alignment over approval. The irony? They thought your silence meant defeat. But silence was your cocoon. Your pause was your preparation. What they called weakness was divine recalibration. And now that you've emerged, you're not who they left. You're the version they feared. The one they hoped would never surface. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Their confusion isn't your responsibility. Your healing journey isn't an invitation for debate. It's a declaration that the cycle ends with you. You're no longer carrying what broke your ancestors. You're breaking it. You're rewriting it. You're standing in places they said you'd never reach, not for applause, but because your purpose demanded it. So don't shrink. Don't explain. Don't go back to watering down your spirit just to be digestible. You were never meant to be safe. You were meant to be sacred. And sacred things don't seek validation. They simply exist in their fullness, knowing that their worth is not dependent on being understood. You didn't come this far to blend in. You came to be the disruption, the divine interruption, the patterns that should have ended generations ago. You are the shift, the awakening, the living proof that not even hell can break what heaven has sealed. This season of your life is about embracing your whole self, the parts that were silenced, the parts that were shamed, the parts that were hidden away because someone told you they were too much. You are not too much. You are the exact dose of divine that this moment requires. And when you stop apologizing for that, you become unstoppable. There's still more ahead, more growth, more tests, but you're ready now because you've remembered who you are. And no matter how loud the noise gets, no matter how heavy the opposition feels, your foundation is stronger because it was built in silence, in the fire, in the unseen spaces where your roots grew deep and your spirit learned to sing. Let them wonder how you did it. Let them question how you kept going. You don't owe anyone the blueprint. Your life is the answer. Your survival is the proof. And your light? It's the aftershock of every battle you chose to walk through instead of run from. So keep walking. Keep shining. Keep remembering that no matter what comes against you, it cannot break what was divinely formed. You are not fragile. You are forged. They didn't expect you to see through it. They thought the manipulation would work forever, that if they turned the world against you, you'd eventually turn against yourself. But something within you stayed loyal to a deeper truth, a truth louder than shame, older than lies, more powerful than fear. You were not born to fit the mold. You were born to break the illusion. And you did. You shattered the box they put you in, not by fighting them directly, but by remembering who you are. That's what they can't stand. That your peace wasn't given to you by them, so they can't take it away. That your light isn't powered by praise, so it can't be dimmed by rejection. Hell tried to make you forget. It threw its hardest shadows at you. Isolation, confusion, betrayal, delay. The darkest voices weren't external. They crept into your own mind. Whispered lies dressed up as logic. You questioned your worth. You doubted your path. You even begged for signs that you weren't completely lost. But even then, even in your lowest valley, a quiet flame inside refused to die out. It flickered, maybe, but it never left. And that was the signal. That was the proof. You were never abandoned. You were being refined. See, the chosen ones don't just carry light. They carry fire. And fire doesn't make you likable. It makes you undeniable. It doesn't make you soft. It makes you sharp. It carves away everything false, everything weak, everything that was never yours to carry. This is why your healing has felt so lonely. Not because you're broken, but because you're rare. Most won't understand the depths you've traveled through, the layers of identity you had to shed just to breathe, the silent nights when your own heartbeat was the only sound of hope, the days you showed up for others while silently bleeding inside. They'll never know the cost, but you do. And now, you carry wisdom that textbooks can't teach and mentors can't replicate. You carry codes that were downloaded through experience. Lessons that didn't come easy, they came through war. And you, chosen one, are the victor walking with invisible medals etched onto your soul. You don't speak from theory. You speak from resurrection. That's why your presence feels different. That's why people shift around you. You remind them of the truth they're still running from. You reflect a version of themselves they buried in exchange for acceptance. You are the living mirror of freedom, and freedom always unsettles the enslaved. So don't soften yourself to ease their discomfort. Your healing isn't a burden, it's a breakthrough. Let them project. Let them misunderstand. You were never here to be liked. You were here to liberate. First yourself, then others. And you've done that, silently, faithfully, without fanfare. That's the real miracle. Not just that you healed, but how you healed. Without applause, without permission, without needing the world to notice. You did it in private, in pieces, in prayer, in persistence. And now you rise, wholly untouchable. They tried to mark you with limitation, but God marked you with legacy. And when legacy calls, limitations crumble. So stand tall, not arrogantly, divinely. You are no longer proving your worth. You are embodying it. You are no longer seeking validation. You are anchoring identity. This is what hell feared. Not your pain, but your power. Not your tears, but your clarity. Not your breakdown, your rebirth. Because now you walk differently. You speak differently. You choose differently. You love differently. Not from trauma, but from truth. Not from scarcity, but from sacredness. You tasted the storm and realized the sky was never your enemy. The storm was your classroom, and class is dismissed. You have graduated from the illusions that used to hold you hostage. You have outgrown every version of yourself that thought survival was the end game. Survival was never the goal. Thriving was. Radiance was. Expansion was. And you're just getting started. You barely scratched the surface of what's inside you. The power, the vision, the voice, all that was forged in the very fire they swore would destroy you. But you were never the kindling. You were the flame. So now, let them see what resilience really looks like. Let them witness what grace under fire truly creates. Let them tremble at the sight of the soul that refused to die in the darkness, and instead became the light it always needed. Because chosen one, hell couldn't break you. It only revealed what was always unbreakable. You stopped asking for the storm to pass, and instead, you learned how to stand in the rain. You stopped begging for the door to open, and instead, you realized you were the key. You stopped shrinking to be digestible, and instead, you let yourself take up divine space. That is power. That is healing. That is divine fire. The enemy never feared your failure. It feared your remembrance. That you would one day wake up and realize who you truly are. That the opinions that broke you never built you. That the lies that bound you were never truth. That the pain that shaped you could not define you. And when you realized all of this, when your soul stood up inside of you, hell flinched, because you stopped waiting to be chosen. You realized you always were, chosen by a force that doesn't change its mind, protected by a fire that burns through illusion, sealed by a calling that can't be revoked by rejection. They tried to convince you you were too much, too emotional, too intense, too different. But all along, you were exactly enough, in a precise measure required to carry out the calling on your life. They tried to isolate you, not realizing isolation was where you received your instructions. They underestimated what silence would do for you. They thought it would make you disappear, but it only made you listen more deeply, to the voice within, to the whisper of destiny, to the fire that never needed a crowd to stay lit. You didn't just survive your trials, you alchemized them. You turned betrayal into boundaries, loss into clarity, silence into strength, confusion into revelation. Every piece they tried to break became a building block. Every scar became a signature. Every no became a redirection into something holier than what you ever asked for. And the greatest part? You didn't have to prove it to anyone. Because now, your peace is loud enough to speak for itself. Your presence is potent enough to shift rooms. You walk into places and things move, not because of arrogance, but because of alignment. You're not chasing validation anymore. You are attracting everything that matches your healed frequency. This is a divine fire they couldn't put out. They threw their shadows, and you outshined them. They tried to distort your reflection, and you refined your perception. They tried to block your voice, and you became the echo they can't silence. You, chosen one, are living proof that light remembers how to return, even after being buried in the deepest night. You are what happens when resilience is born in sacred rebellion, when a soul refuses to comply with systems built on fear, shame, and silence. They wanted obedience. You brought liberation. They wanted conformity. You brought awakening. And now they don't know what to do with you, because you no longer need them. You are not begging at the gates anymore. You are building your own temples. You are not waiting for someone to open the door. You are becoming the door. And those who were never meant to walk with you simply won't. Your light now repels what's false as much as it attracts what's true. That's not arrogance. That's spiritual filtration. Your life has become a sacred boundary. Your presence a declaration. I survived. I healed. I remember. And what you remember is dangerous. Because in remembering who you are, you remind others who they are. In claiming your fire, you awaken theirs. In walking in truth, you ignite truth. You don't just heal for yourself. You break the chains for those who still don't know they're shackled. This is why you had to be tested the way you were. Why the pain had to be personal. Why the exile had to be real. Because only someone who has walked through hell can carry the authority to tell others they can survive it. And you can. You did. And now, there's nothing left to prove. There's only space to create, to become, to radiate. You're not who you were. You're not even who they remember. You're becoming something the world has never seen before, because the fire you carry was never meant to fit into their narratives. You were meant to write your own. So walk forward now, not with the weight of the past, but with the wings of transformation. Hell tried everything, but here you are, still rising, still glowing, still chosen, still fire. They thought the flame would burn you out, but instead, it burned away what wasn't real. They thought isolation would break you, but it only amplified the voice within. They thought rejection would destroy you, but it redirected you to the truth. What was sent to kill you became the exact path to your ascension. Because chosen ones aren't protected from fire, they're forged in it. That's what they didn't understand. You weren't exempt from the pain. You weren't shielded from betrayal. You weren't spared the confusion, the tears, the silence, the nights when nothing made sense. No, you were given a full experience, so that when you emerged, you would carry not only power, but compassion, not only light, but depth, not only truth, but empathy. Your strength didn't come from avoiding the storm. It came from dancing in the middle of it. And that's the difference between you and those who only wear masks of power. You don't need to pretend anymore. You've lived it. You've wept and broken and rebuilt. You've sat in rooms filled with noise and felt alone. You've walked paths no one understood. You've looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the person staring back. But you stayed. You stayed through the transformation, through the unraveling, through the holy undoing. And now you walk different, talk different, see different. You don't need to convince anyone. Your energy does that for you. The way you show up now, it carries a frequency, one that makes people pause, one that makes darkness nervous, one that makes truth rise in others. This is the fire that hell can't extinguish, because it doesn't come from this world. It was placed in you by something eternal. And no demon, no lie, no failure, no weapon, no rejection, no curse can ever override it. It's sealed. You may still feel pain, but you'll never be destroyed. You may still feel weary, but you'll never be abandoned. You may still feel misunderstood, but you'll never be misaligned. Because this path, as brutal and sacred as it is, was never meant to make you normal. It was meant to make you luminous. It was meant to show others that surviving isn't the finish line. Becoming is. And now, you're becoming the very thing you once longed for. You're the comfort you once begged to find. The clarity you prayed would arrive. The breakthrough you didn't think you'd live to see. You became it. And that's why you no longer need external permission to thrive. You no longer have to dim your voice, shrink your spirit, or delay your dreams. The delay was preparation. The denial was redirection. The detours were refinement. Everything was working for this moment. This version of you, this healed, refined, holy version, is who hell feared you become, because this version doesn't chase. It attracts. This version doesn't plead. It declares. This version doesn't retreat. It rises. This version walks with fire in their eyes and stillness in their chest. You don't react, you respond. You don't collapse, you transmute. You don't conform, you evolve. And with each breath, you remember who you are. With each step, you reclaim what was lost. With each word, you rewrite what was once erased. No more proving, no more explaining, no more seeking validation from those not called to understand you. You're here to walk in alignment, not approval. And from this day forward, you do not carry the weight of old identities. You do not wear labels that were placed on you in confusion. You do not inherit the shame that was never yours to begin with. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are not forgotten. You are forged, and forged things last. Hell can rage. People can misunderstand. Paths can shift. But the truth is that you made it through. And nothing can take that from you. This is a fire you now walk in. This is the armor you now wear. This is a calling you now honor. You are sealed. You are chosen. You are unshakable. You are divine fire walking. Still here. Still rising. Still holy. Still whole. And if you ever forget again, if the weight of the world starts pressing on your chest, if the voices outside try to make you question what you carry within, remember this. You were not sent here to blend in. You were sent to blaze through illusions. You were not chosen because you were perfect. You were chosen because you were willing to rise again, willing to stand when others fell, willing to love when it was easier to hate, willing to trust when the evidence was gone, willing to forgive when it cost everything. This willingness is your weapon. This heart, scarred but still open, is your mark of victory. You cross through fire and you carry the fragrance of heaven. You're not just surviving anymore, you're igniting. Every space you enter is changed by your presence. Every word you speak carries legacy. Every breath you take echoes divine purpose. And while some may never see what was required to become who you are now, the ones meant to see you will. The ones aligned with your calling will feel it. And nothing can stop what's already unfolding. No fear, no delay, no resistance. You are no longer waiting for the moment. You are the moment. So walk as if your steps are sacred, because they are. Speak as if your voice carries prophecy, because it does. Love as if your heart is indestructible, because it was never made to break, only to expand. This fire in you isn't here to consume. It's here to illuminate. Chosen one, hell couldn't break you, and it never will.